Welcome, brethren, to our study today, Counsel of James 3:1. Let not many of you become teachers, my brethren, knowing that as such we will incur a stricter judgment. We're going to bring this up today because during our 15 years of being in this message, it's become clear that this counsel is not given the proper respect or the proper focus that we need to put on today, because as you'll see as we go through this presentation, there are teachers amongst us that are teaching things that are not in the message, that are ideas from the teacher, and therefore we need to go into this to warn the brethren. Let not many become teachers, brethren. Sorry, it says let not many become teachers. Why? Because many don't have the gift of teaching. They're running ahead. They're misinterpreting. They're taking out of context the message. That tells me right there, it should tell you, that person isn't gifted. I mean, yes, we can see that occasionally, but when we see a teacher that does this time and again, we know that the Spirit of Truth is not guiding. And so we want to put this study on today to help guide the brethren to know the message as to regards to teaching. And this, we hope and pray, will be helpful. May you pause the video, claim the promise of John 16:13, and He shall guide us into all truth. Let's begin. All right, so our study verse is the following. The only ones that will endure to the end will be those who carefully watch their steps from being carried away either by his additions to or by his subtractions from the works of inspiration. 2TG, number 46, page 43 to 44. We show a picture here, and of course we know this well. Keep in the middle of the road. That can be found at 5 Answer, page 35. There's several other references that state the same thing, brethren, that we have to stay in the middle of the road. Now, in this particular study, we're going to talk about staying in the middle of the road in regards to proper Davidian behavior. In other words, dress and how we purport ourselves in public. And if we're not staying in the middle of the road, going by strictly that which is published, we're going to be in trouble. And like this warning says, those may not make it because they're adding to and subtracting from the works of inspiration. In Fundamental Beliefs Tract, page 35 and 36, we read, the Bible and the books of spirit prophecy being the sole source of the shepherd's rod message. Therefore, when the rod is taught, the Bible and the spirit prophecy are taught. And since none but the Spirit of Truth, who transmitted the mysteries of inspiration, can interpret them, then those who attempt to teach them without this inspired interpretational authority inevitably fall into the forbidden practice of private interpretation. 2 Peter 1:20. The great evil which has brought Christendom into its present almost boundless state of schism and consequent confusion, strife, and impotency. As we dare not follow in such a path, we must therefore, as teachers of the Shepherd's Rod, the official publications of the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Association, teach only in the light of the rod those passages which in one way or another need to be interpreted. Thus only will all present truth believers ever become of the same mind, seeing eye to eye and speaking the same things. 1 Corinthians 1:10, 1 Peter 3:8, and Isaiah 52:8. And as such as do choose to engage in private interpretation are respectfully asked to desist from teaching in the name of the rod and at its expense. Let them, like honest men, teach in their own names and their own expense. Again, that's found in Fundamental Belief Tract, page 35 to 36. So here we see another counsel, brethren, that if you've got your own ideas that are apart from the message, go ahead and teach it. But don't teach it in the name of the rod. Don't teach it as a Davidian Seventh-day Adventist. You can teach it as a private individual and make that declaration when you do your presentation. Then you're following counsel, right? But unfortunately, many of the teachers today are teaching private interpretation, private ideas in the name of the rod. All right, so this is a serious situation today we find ourselves in. All right, so we're going to go over a recent sermon, and it was entitled Changing the Standards of What It Means to be a Davidian by Trevor Bingham. Now, we know Brother Trevor well. We've spoken to him many times over the years, and he's the leader of Bashan. And unfortunately, brethren, we're going to watch a video that's going to be quite striking, and you'll see what I mean by the presentation. We've cut out a short part of it, maybe about 5 or 7 minutes, to go over the particular area of concern, and we'll give you the link to follow the whole sermon at your leisure. If you want to follow Brother Trevor's full sermon, you can, but we're going to just highlight some of the areas that we need to discuss. We're going to have to get out of this site here and go over to another site.
We, as a little background information on this subject, we as Davidians believe we have the Elijah message, the message that restores all things. Restores it to what condition? This message restores all things to the Edenic condition, the pre-fall condition, right? That's what we believe. We're moving in that direction, back to that direction. Now, the way the people dressed after the fall, these things have changed generation by generation, or century by century, very ancient times, millennium by millennium. But they are changing. They change. For us, we, in all of our things, not just dress, but everything, is being pointed back to Eden, okay? And that's our principle. Now I want to, in just one tiny point, elucidate a principle of dress from Eden. And we don't take this principle very far right now, by the way, of restoring all things. So that is not in the case of dress. But in one tiny point, they did not use a head covering in Eden. The women did not use a head covering in Eden. When Eve prayed, there's no understanding of that, and in fact there's a clear understanding that she didn't. Implication, I would say. Now here is Sister White with a hat on. You know why she's wearing a hat outside? Because it was the standard of the culture for a woman of her station and distinction to be, when they were dressed in a certain way, to wear a hat. Men too, by the way, if you look at those old-time pictures. Today, things are different, but that's the culture that she was in. But this is what she preached in a sermon to both men and women. She preached this: in entering the house of worship, you should remember that it is in the house of God, that it is the house of God. Respect should be shown by the removal of the hat, remembering that you are entering into the presence of God and angels. You should teach the children reverence. Let earnest efforts be carried forward to this end, and remember that you are in the temple of the living God. Now, this was a cultural understanding in her time. That was understanding in her time, and if your historical horizons are not broad enough to encompass it, you need to understand these things. You need to know, okay? To be all closed up and narrow-minded and live in the present and not know anything about the past or the future is not Davidian. And you do need to know these things, brethren. Go and learn these things yourself. In her time, she was saying, and there's another statement on this in the Spirit of Prophecy, about how the grandmothers always wore bonnets everywhere except in church, okay, when they took it off. That was the standard then. There is much to say about this showing respect to God, but the point here that we want to deal with right now is that we show respect in different ways. There's not one way. And if you think that your way is the only way, and it must be this way, you're mistaken. In Eden, Eve showed respect without the hat. In Roman times, they showed respect by covering the head for the woman. In Sister White's time, they showed respect by taking off the hat when they went into the church. It is a matter of our cultural understanding here. This is something that does change, and for us, it is changing back to the Edenic standard. And if you say, well, Paul says blah, 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 we will point you to the standard in Eden, brethren. That is where we're going. Now, you don't have to go there right this minute. You don't have to take off your hat in the sanctuary. But if you think that you can't take off your hat, and you shouldn't, and Brother Trevor is mistaken, and Bashan is mistaken on this subject, then you set yourself up to stand at the tomb of the dead prophet and be left behind. And I know this is a hard saying for you, and I know that many people are going to have a hard time on these things. And it's interesting that we should have a hard time on this little thing. And we're messing up so badly on the big things. Don't be confused here. The standards of what it.
Okay, brethren, so I think you've heard enough of what Brother Trevor is saying. And just to recap real quick, we're going to look at this situation and kind of summarize basically what happened here. Basically, Brother Trevor is now proclaiming that from Bashan, the teaching is that wearing the head covering for the women is optional. As you clearly heard, the standards are changing, and that today we're endeavoring to go back to restoration as it was in the very beginning. And because Eve didn't wear a hat, that's where we're heading to, the same behavior with the respect. And so, brethren, let's go further here and look into this a little more. All right, now, because Brother Trevor has made that declaration, what we need to do is compare that to that which is written. And you can find this in question number 119 of the answer. This is found on Answer Book 5. And it says, shall the woman leave her hat on when the man takes his off? Question 119. What does Paul mean in 1 Corinthians 11 concerning the woman covering her head? Does not verse 15 show that her hair is her covering? Answer. But I would, says the Holy Spirit, have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. 1 Corinthians 11:3. I love that, brethren, because that shows the line of authority. All right, so this isn't our idea. This is what the Word says, that there's a line of authority. The head of every man is Christ. The head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. So when you wear the hat in the holy reverence occasions, you are showing honor to your head, the husband, the man. And then if the man wears a hat, of course, he's not showing reverence. And we'll get into that more here. Note the order in which divinity and humanity are linked. God, Christ, man, and the woman. Thus it is that every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head, God. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered dishonoreth her head, the man. For that is even all one, as if she were shaven. For if the woman be not covered, let her also be shorn. That is, if a woman will not wear a hat, then let her cut off her hair. In other words, does she want to be bald? Either wear the hat or be bald. That's what it's basically saying. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be covered. So again, it says, I don't think women want to be bald, so let her be covered. Let her wear a hat. For a man indeed ought to not cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of God. But the woman is the glory of the man. 1 Corinthians 11, verses 4 to 8. The scriptures plainly teaches that a man ought to take his hat off when praying or prophesying, teaching the scriptures, while the woman should put hers on. Okay, brethren, let me repeat that. The scriptures plainly teach that a man ought to take his hat off when praying or prophesying, teaching the scriptures, while the woman should put hers on. One could not logically conclude from 1 Corinthians 11, verse 15, that the woman's hair is the covering referred to. If such were the case, then logically the man should shave his head in order to make the distinction between the two. Moreover, if the woman's hair is the covering required, then why would the scriptures say she is to wear it when prophesying, praying or prophesying? What else could she do? And could she take her hair off, take off her hair covering when not praying, unless she wore a wig? The scriptures therefore make it clear that any religious occasion which requires a man to take his hat off requires the woman, let me repeat, requires the woman to put hers on. Answer page 38 to 39. Now, brethren, you'll search the whole message, everything that's published from the prophet, not from the apostate wife, but the prophet. Everything that's published never counteracts this. It always leaves it here. It says, put the head covering on for the woman. Any religious occasion. So the message is very clear and stays on this point. It never says anything about what's going to happen in the kingdom, whether a woman shall wear her hat or not. It never addresses that. It doesn't jump ahead to that, which is what we just heard in that sermon. The brother Trevor, is jumping ahead. He's going ahead of inspiration and saying what is going to happen in the kingdom. A woman's not going to wear her hat or head covering in the kingdom. We don't know that. That is yet to be seen. So we have to stick with inspiration and we're safe. All right, so what we basically heard is prophecy fulfilled. Let me explain. Prophecy must be fulfilled. The Lord says, behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Somebody is to come in the spirit and power of Elijah. And when he appears, men may say, you are too earnest. You do not interpret the scriptures in the proper way. Let me tell you how to teach your message. Testimonies to Ministers, page 475. Brethren, we just saw a sermon where the teacher is telling the prophet his message. All right, so this is prophecy being fulfilled in our eyes, in our ears. And it's very sad because we have to warn, and we'll get into further about this, but we have to warn our brethren, stay in the middle of the road, don't run ahead. All right, so let's set some guidelines down for the teacher. First, if any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself. John 7:17. This is a very good principle our Lord laid down for us. What do we see? If we do His will, in other words, we're obeying the message, we're walking in the light, we're obeying everything that we know to do, we shall know the doctrine. All right? So that tells us right there, if somebody is not speaking according to the doctrine, there may be a problem there. They're not doing the will of the Lord, not obeying the message as he should. However, when He, the Spirit of truth, has come, He will guide you into all truth. For He will not speak of His own authority, but whatever He hears, He will speak, and He will tell you things to come. John 16:13. Now, this is the quote that we always say in our presentations. John 16:13. Claim this promise, brethren, and the Lord will grant it. But again, if we're not doing His will, there's no guarantee the Spirit of truth will guide us. All right? Because we shall not necessarily know of the doctrine. We have to do the will. And what is the will? We just saw man take his hat off, women put hers on during the religious occasion. This is the will of God. And if you're not doing that, you're not going to know the doctrine, brethren. This all starts to make sense, doesn't it? All right, so let's look at more principles. Does the teacher teach and truly believe in the fundamental beliefs? And you know, our fundamental belief track goes into everything, and that's 22 Seventh-day Adventist fundamental beliefs, 15 Davidian Seventh-day Adventist beliefs. Now, it's very important to concentrate on this number one, because this is one of the greatest issues among Davidians today. They claim, many of them do, if you'll address the teachers of the various organizations and the different ministries, you'll say, do you believe in fundamental beliefs? Oh yeah, we believe in them, Brethren, you know how they're being hypocritical? Is that they say they believe them, but when you look, for instance, at the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist fundamental beliefs, it's a sequence of events, timeline, right? And they're out teaching and proclaiming different timelines than what the fundamental belief tract says. The Davidian Seventh-day Adventist fundamental beliefs teach. They're teaching differently than those event timelines. So are they really a believer? No, brethren. They're saying they are, but they're being hypocritical. They're teaching opposite of what they're saying. So that's the first and foremost thing to ask yourself about a teacher. Is he going according strictly to our fundamental beliefs? That's very important. Number two, does the teacher admit there is many lessons to learn and many, you notice inspiration doubles down, many to unlearn? One selected messages, page 37. Now, as we've talked about many times before, we always tell this to Mother, right? When we have an opportunity, we show this quote to them. You know, we're talking about the book by Uriah, Smith, Daniel, and the Revelation. There's so many lessons there have to be unlearned and all the things. So we give, excuse me, we give the example here of, excuse me, brother, I got something in my throat. We give the example here of the fact that, yes, the SDA has to unlearn many lessons, the beast and leper-like and everything else. They have to unlearn a lot of things. But inspiration here is so true to not only Seventh-day Adventists, but Davidian Seventh-day Adventists. Yes, we have many to unlearn. And we went into this before. So if the teacher, let's say you're talking to a leader, for instance, Waco, right? You're talking to one of the main teachers, the leaders. Hey, brother, do you have any lessons you can explain to me that we as Davidians have to unlearn? Ask that question, brother. You'll see. They will probably not say anything. Why? Because they're proud of their air-filled doctrines. All right, there's some air-filled doctrines that have been handed down through the years from M.J. Bingham, Florence Hodoff, and Donna Dare. We have to name the teachers that have given us some false doctrine, brethren. And that's where a lot of these long-time Davidian teachers have learned from. Okay, so that's very important. If they say to you, yes, there are some lessons we have to unlearn, they'll go into what lessons it is that we as Davidians have to unlearn. And this is a good sign that you're on the right path if the teacher says that to you. Does the teacher admit and practice that to be the greatest of all, he must be your servant? Matthew 23:11-12. Now, what we mean by that is that in our 15 years of experience with this message, there have been many, many times, brother, that we've reached out to leaders of the various organizations, either by email, phone call, Facebook, whatever. And you know what? We have been ignored. They haven't taken the time to respond to our honest inquiry. So, if the teacher that you're inquiring about, and you want to know a little bit about, is showing proper attitude, he will address your concern. He will want to be your servant. That's the way I practice. That's the way we at Pre-11th Hour practice. If somebody reaches out to us, God forbid, we ignore them. We get back to them 3 weeks later, or a month later, or something like that. No, brethren. We stand ready to be servants. That's what we are. Even the leaders, they have to be servants. Because why? Well, if you want to be the greatest of all, you want to be great in the eyes of the Lord, you must be ready to be a servant. And you stand at attention. You stand ready to address any concerns, any brethren reaching out to you. You stand ready. The next one, does the teacher teach from the golden bowl and acknowledge only 2 messengers are to come before the SDA church judgment? And that's found in 5 Symbolic Code number 15, page 3. So, to give you an example, you have organizations like Wave Chief, right? Lennox Sam. He doesn't teach. There's 2 messengers to come before the church judgment. He teaches Ellen White, Victor Hodoff, and the Elijah prophesies in Malachi 4:5, which he doesn't come right out and say it, but he indicates that it's himself. So, brethren, this right there is a very concerning issue. So, make sure that the teacher teaches from the golden bowl. Now, when we say from the golden bowl, again, this will eliminate the false teachers from the correct teachers. And that is that the organization, the group that you want to follow, teaches from the golden bowl. The 2 pipes that have put the golden oil into the golden bowl from the trees, the scriptures. Those 2 are Ellen White and Victor Hodoff. Not Florence Hodoff, not M.J. Bingham, not Donna Dare, all these other pipes that have attempted to put their pipes into the bowl. They don't teach, right? So that's another good sign that you're on the right track with the teachers that are teaching the right way. Teachers of present truth, having before them the example of tragic results caused by conflicting teachings by the SDA ministry, and, in addition to this, having been repeatedly warned to teach only that which has been revealed and published, stand in great condemnation before God when they set forth conflicting or unauthorized views on any subject. Be absolutely certain that you are teaching according to that which is written, and not according to that which you may think should be or will someday be written. It's 3 Symbolic Code, number 5-6, page 14. So again, we go back to the sermon we heard today. He's teaching that which should be published, that which will someday be written, right? So this right here is another counsel that is very concerning, brethren. It helps us to know that which is true. Now, we are involved in what's called the Pre-11th Hour ministry. If any of you would like to follow us and become a part of our ministry, you're more than welcome to get in contact with us. We're endeavoring to do the Lord's message. And if some of you are aware, we've had a recent issue with one of our teachers, and now we've had to have a little bit of a separation from this teacher and his followers, and so we're now establishing ourselves in the fact that we are ready to do the full Davidian Seventh-day Adventist organizational blueprint. All right, so we've given time, and for some of you that aren't aware, and we'll post links, we've given time to let the Lord work through us to plead with Mountaindale. And we had several meetings. We had just recently the last couple meetings with them. It's become clear that our pleading for them to come in line with the truth, by that I mean discontinue the new codes as authorized in the bowl, discontinue the false teaching of the timelines of the fundamental beliefs, discontinue the Assyrian Confederacy brought on by Don Adair. All of that was rejected by Mountaindale. So, because of the history that the Lord has always given time for the airfield organization to come in line, and they don't do it, then it's left to us. Now we have no more pleading to do, as it were. It's up to them to come to us now. We cannot go and search them out and plead with them. That's the way the history has been. Remember now, the Spirit Prophecy says if we fail to know the history, then we will fail to know how the Lord is leading today. We've done many presentations with that point. So you just look back in the history, brethren, and you know how the Lord led the individual main organizations and how he transferred the main organizations from one to another when it was found out that error doctrine would not be corrected. Of course, the Lord is always willing to give time and plead, with that airfield. You look at Jesus, right? And Jesus was crucified. And yet, he still had the brethren plead with Israel, the Jews, after being stoned, crucified on the cross. He pleaded until the stoning of Stephen. He pleaded with them, even still, after that. So the Lord has always pleaded with the airfield people to come in line. But there's a certain point where he lets us know. So we'll get back with you, give you more updates on the structure and how Pray 11th Hour will be coming more involved in the actual Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Association guidelines and the Leviticus and so forth. Now, to contact us, you can reach us through the Gmail, pray11thhour@gmail.com. Yours personally, you can reach me at palmguy@dc.rr.com. If you want to reach our chairman, the head of the Pre-11th Hour Ministry at this current time, Brother Terry Harrison, you can reach him through that email. And our website is pre11thhourministry.org. So we hope you've been blessed, brethren. And again, this is a lesson that we have to learn, and that is that if you want to be a teacher, you have to follow counsel. All right? We've heard very clearly that counsel is not being followed by many of our teachers today. And but the Lord will have his true people, those that are willing to listen to his voice, follow the message, follow his injunctions, follow his teachings as far as dressing and so forth, and he'll have a people, and that people will get to the kingdom. So until next time, may the Lord continue to guide you into all truth. Amen.